Well, Sherlock Holmes, let's hope he doesn't have to look at the case of the disappearing taxi cab, because that really would be, I mean, a terrible blow, not only to disabled people across the city, but it would be a betrayal of everything that the city holds dear. You know, decent public transport, something that everybody at some point will need, and then you'll find, oh, we've got an Uber cab, and that's all you got, mate. Anyway, so I thought I'd try and get a bit of an insight into the character of our present mayor, Marvin Rees. He is somebody who I interviewed on our BCFM show just before the local elections back in 2016. And he very reluctantly came on the programme only when he found out that all the other mayor candidates were going to be sitting around the table except him on the same day of the show. He phoned me up to say, all right, I'll be there. And so he was extremely reluctant, even though, of course, he spent several years at the BBC. You would have thought he would be quite happy sitting around a radio studio and a radio table chatting about these things. But he didn't seem to want to do that. Also, there was an accusation, really, I think it was 2016, 2017, that was out in the Bristol Post, saying that Marvin Rees was passed over for promotion at the BBC because he was black. Now, certainly having spoken to people at the BBC, this is simply not the case. He was given all sorts of extra opportunities, because actually the BBC is a particularly conscientious employer when it comes to equalities, and so it just was, that story simply wasn't true. The other thing I found rather frustrating was that as a Labour Party member, he wasn't interested in joining the union, so he was approached several times by National Union of Journalists reps up at the BBC to join the National Union of Journalists, but he decided that he wasn't interested and refused to. So that's the sort of Labour mayor we're dealing with. But it was fascinating, I thought, to talk to James Adlington, who runs a business, Bristol Blue Glass, here in Bristol, about an encounter he had with Bristol's Mayor Marvin Rees up at Filton at the Bristol, I think, is it called the Aerospace Museum, where Concorde is. It's called Aerospace Bristol, isn't it? And this was actually, interestingly, Saf, this was the time when the business that's behind the scooters was just trying to sell them to the mayor. And apparently the mayor and the scooter guy went off at the end of the hand in hand across the sunset at the end of the this business meeting. Anyway, so let's have a listen now to James Adlington describing the encounter with Marvin Rees that took place at this. To be fair to James, as he explains here, he's a very independent-minded businessman, and this was not his sort of normal event. He wouldn't normally go along to these business meetings with the university and people like that, because they're not the sort of people he gets on particularly well with. They're very money-minded and hard-headed, and he's a bit of a punk, actually. He was a punk singer in his younger days. And so here's James describing his encounter with Marvin Rees up at the Aerospace Museum a few years ago, just as they were getting ready to introduce those wonderful scooters.
I went up there, and there were, it was all chaos as everybody's setting up. And the amount of money that was thrown at this event was, I was sort of almost reeling, the amount of staff, the amount of food, the amount of, there was meals and silver service sort of provided for everybody. And we're just setting up this little store, and there's all these people coming in from Denmark, I think, and Germany and places like that. Some sort of business arrangements with the city. And I happened to meet with this chap who we started to get into a conversation.
Okay, so just be clear, James, are you talking about Aerospace Bristol, this new museum up at Filton?
Yes, yeah, exactly there, yeah.
Oh, okay, so this must have been around about the time it was opening, a couple of years ago, possibly, was it, roughly?
Yeah, it was a time, and there was this company that brought up loads of scooters with a view to sort of like getting them out onto Bristol streets.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it's almost like a kind of showcase thing where it's a private invite thing, but if you've got a business and you're invited there, you can kind of sell the idea to the city civic leaders. Okay, so that was scooters, was it?
Yes, and I couldn't understand, to be quite honest, what the hell we were doing there, because these people weren't interested in what we were doing. It was basically just a free piss up in a free dinner, and everybody gets to ride on a scooter. You know,
Okay.
that was, yeah, I mean, I couldn't see, you know, I mean, they just needed bodies there, I think, on the ground. And look, I'm not very good with faces or famous people. I've lived my life, actually, to be quite honest, around famous people, and I've never recognised them. You know, I'm rubbish at that sort of thing. And I met what turned out who turned out to be Marvin, the mayor. And being an idiot, we were just standing around waiting for things to sort of happen. And I'd set up my stall and I was just standing around, and there was two women who turned out to be his sort of like, I should imagine they were his handlers. You know, they looked after him.
Okay, like security or something.
No, they were quite attractive, quite nicely dressed, women of about early 30s, quite sort of like business-like, and they looked after him, you know. And what
do you mean, bringing him drinks or?
Yeah, and you know, sort of, is there anything I can? You know, I didn't realise that they were together. I thought that these two girls were just two girls that had a stall somewhere. You know, I thought they were had a business thing like that, and I didn't realise that they were with him. And me and this chap, we got into a bit of a conversation. Nothing, you know, and he said something that sort of like was about restricting. It got very quickly onto sort of like the subject of free speech, and he said that free speech, you know, speech is violence. And I said, well, no, that free speech is the pillar of our society. That without free speech, we wouldn't be here now. You know, without the ability to say and to discuss. And if you don't have free speech, you're basically, the state is trying to control the way you think.
Okay, yeah, but what was this? Can you remember what the topic was you were discussing that led on to this? You know, what is free speech and what isn't?
I can't remember exactly how it got onto the free speech thing, but it got there very quickly. And all I said to him was, you know, I said, whatever your political beliefs are, I said, and whatever anybody's political beliefs are, or anybody's feelings, or what anybody's religious beliefs are in here or anywhere in the world, I said, I will fight to the death for their right to have those beliefs and to speak those beliefs. And he called me a fascist. And I was sort of rather stunned. I probably reacted a bit sharpish, insofar as I come from a council estate, and if you know, because when somebody calls you a fascist, right? Okay, if you're having a political discussion or anything like that, and the moment they call you a fascist, basically they're shutting the discussion down, because anything you say post that statement can be discounted 100% because you're a fascist. If you understand what I'm saying, it's a way of killing it stone dead. Like, it's not discussion. It's it's the opposite of discussion. It's a way of, it's a trope that they use on the left. It's what I actually said. I said, unless you're incitement to violence or to harm somebody, I said, you should be able to say whatever you want, you know, and, he called me a fascist, and I sort of like, I think I called him an idiot, if you want the God's honest truth. I said, well, you're an idiot then, for, you know, and he walked away about 15 meters away to up the wall and hugged himself like, and looked at the floor. And I thought, my God, there's something wrong with him. And I said to these two girls, I think there's something wrong with him. And they were absolutely in a panic. And I said, I'm going to go and see if he's all right, because I said, he don't look all right to me. And they said, whatever you do, don't go near him. Don't go near him. Like, you know. And next thing I know, that, you know, one of them ran over and literally sort of like sort of spoke to him for a few minutes and then took him somewhere else. And I thought, well, anyway, somebody said to me later on, I was at my store, and they said, "Are you the chap that upset Marvin?" I said, who's Marvin? And he said, "The Mayor of Bristol." I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Did I upset Marvin?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, he's that guy you were talking to." I said, "Oh, is that the Mayor of Bristol, is it? I didn't realise that." So
look, let's be clear, James. I mean, did he have to leave the meeting then and leave the event?
Well, no, it was all show. All that sort of like going away and cuddling yourself and everything like that. That was just, it was like a 14-year-old, it was just basically because I was just saying what he said was wrong. You cannot tell people how to think. You cannot dictate to people what they should do and how they should believe, what they should believe in and everything like that. People should be free to make their own minds up. And basically, you've upset Marvin. It all went round that, the guy from Bristol Blue Glass upset Marvin. Anyway, from that day, I mean, we were having sort of like, a stream of emails and things like that between the council. Oh, well, they stopped there and then. The next day they didn't, we think, and we have emailed them and sort of like tried to sort of like, so about this property here and this property there, like, but the answers have been very terse and very, succinct. And, if the only communication we have with them is if we generate it now, they will not automatically get in touch with us or anything like that. It stopped it on a thing. So, I mean, yeah, right, I might have upset Marvin. I did. And it cost me the possibility of moving my business back into the centre of Bristol again.
So that's James Adlington from Bristol Blue Glass. They're describing this event a couple of years ago. One of these little boondoggles where you get free food, free drinks. You get to meet loads of other business people from around the city. I mean, he goes into it at the end there, Martin. But what James was trying to do was to actually rent some Bristol City Council property in the centre here. And the emails all just stopped at that point. So it's quite obvious that he's upsetting the mayor, has lost him his opportunities in the city to move his business into the centre.
Well, obviously, I didn't know anything about any of this until I've just heard it.
It's disgusting, isn't it? Absolutely disgusting for a civic leader because he doesn't like the cut of somebody's jib, to say, well, you can't come into this city.
Well, I don't know what the detail of what is.
Well, you just heard it.
Yes, I've heard it, and I've heard one version of it, and of course we haven't heard from Marvin, as you know.
Yeah, well, because Marvin
he would no doubt have his version of events.
Yeah, he might not have his version of events. In fact, I think that's much more likely that there won't be a version of events from Marvin.
Probably not. Certainly not on this.
There is certainly no
podcast.
No versions of any events from Marvin at all, because as Gary Hopkins explained last week, he only talks to the people he wants to talk to. He only invites to use the facilities of Bristol Property Services, which is a big portfolio handed down to him from hundreds of years of previous civic leaders, to people that don't say things to him like, I think everyone should have free speech.
Well, I'm not going to defend Marvin or attack Marvin. I heard what James said there.
What about the principles here?
In principle,
a civic leader runs it as if it's his own fiefdom.
Well, that is how the mayoral system was designed by the Liberal-Tory coalition. He's doing nothing that isn't within his power.
And the Americans.
Yes, it's a US-based system. It's basically Marvin is empowered to run the city because he's got a directly elected mandate, and he doesn't have to justify that to anybody. He doesn't have to go on any radio programmes or TV programmes if he doesn't want to. Maybe he should, but he doesn't. And of course, he rubs some people up the wrong way. He rubs them up the wrong way.
Well, it's not that, is it? It's just about whether a political leader will answer questions from journalists.
The only comeback on that is on election day next Thursday. And if he doesn't win,
I can tell you there's more comeback, actually, because there will be discussion about this. I think, what's happened is we've also had the whole issue with Adam Postans being quite clearly and very obviously, even you would admit, bullied in a council meeting. He's one of the local democracy reporters, and they would say, are there any reporters in the room? Ha, ha, ha. where he had described something as a council dump when actually it was a waste and recycling centre. Well, the thing is, most of the people in the city still call it a dump, and so Adam is just using the language that most people in the city use, and yet he was ridiculed, bullied and pilloried for that in public by these. I mean, I think there's this almost like cocaine snorting attitude that we've got now in Bristol City Council, where these sort of things are fine. You know, you can just push people around, bully people. There's also the leaving of the Labour Party in droves by some of the councillors that have been bullied by this mayor and this mayor's office. Well, you can't deny that.
I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that Marvin has ever taken cocaine, Tony. So
it's just that attitude.
Well, no, but you're damaging your own case by making that sort of statement.
What I said was, I didn't say he'd taken cocaine, did I? I said it was that sort of
snorting attitude.
Yes, that's right, and that's the sort of attitude you get from arrogant gangsters.
Well, he may be arrogant, but he certainly there's no evidence to say that he's ever snorted cocaine, and it sounds as if you are not going to vote for him.
Well, what we had was that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about how a civic leadership, something which is a democratic system, can be effectively privatised, taken into private hands, and the same sort of attitudes that business leaders will use to run their company for profit for shareholders are introduced into a city's own leadership.
The whole concept of elected mayors was in order for them to function more like business leaders, and that's why George Ferguson became the mayor, because he was already a millionaire business leader.
Bristol City Council has been privatised.
No, it hasn't been privatised. It's been messed with by the creation of a mayoral system by the Tories so that they could commercialise the decision-making process. And they basically then took money away from a city like Bristol, which has got a substantial business rate, means that Marvin then becomes in the pocket of the business community rather than having an elected council like the Greater London Council, which would be run on a party political basis.
The reason I talk about cocaine is because we just had a few weeks ago, Bristol Waste, I think it was about a year ago, were accused by one of their employees of having regular snorting of cocaine by their employees. And she was then, she was sacked. She had all sorts of other accusations about being bullied by the Bristol Waste employees. Now, this is a company which is directly managed by the people who are appointed by Bristol City Council. It's one of these arm's length companies which is proving to be rather a disaster, particularly where I am in St Paul's, with the waste not being collected for weeks and massive amounts of fly tipping going on, systems not working for local residents who are trying to get rubbish that's been dumped in the street moved. So those accusations we've heard just in the last few weeks have all been just thrown out. So there's no apparent evidence for it, and there's nothing going to be done about it, even if it was true. But these employees that have accused the Bristol Waste of this are sticking to their guns. They're saying, well, that's the way it is. There seems to be just a complete denial to dealing with what is effectively these private fiefdoms that have been created, particularly Bristol Energy, which has now lost £50 million of public money, and Bristol Waste, which is simply not doing its job.